You're listening to Be the Exception podcast, episode 171. Today, we are chatting with an early childhood special education specialist as she talks about her journey from becoming a special education teacher and now into her role as an early childhood special education teacher, the things she's learned over the past year, and things she wishes she had known sooner. We're talking with Ashley from Spedtacular Days, and she's sharing a lot of great tips of her past 11 years of special education, but specifically as an early childhood teacher. So let's go ahead and jump on into today's podcast episode and hear all the tips and tricks from Ashley.
Welcome to Be the Exception podcast. As teachers, each one of us has something that comes naturally to us that others would love to know more about. Throughout this podcast, we'll chat with amazing professionals and offer easily digestible tips that you can quickly implement in your classroom or business, helping you stand out with things you do really well. Your host, Dawn Ellis, is a qualified educational specialist with 10 years of special education experience, published journal articles, and was a state finalist for Elementary Teacher of the Year. Dawn provides tools for special education teachers to perform at their very best, helping deal with the frustrating daily obstacles of being an educator. She offers a roadmap of resources and strategies to make you a confident leader in your school and community. So if you're ready to start the conversation, learn from others, and grow together, you're in the right place. Now here's your host, Dawn Ellis.
Well, hey there, and welcome to another episode of Be the Exception podcast. My name is Dawn Ellis. I'm the host of this show, and I am so glad you are here. Before we hop into today's podcast episode with a very special guest, I wanted to let you know that as the back to school season is beginning to ramp up, there are products for you in the TPT shop to help you save so much time, but there's also a brand new webinar to help you plan out your year for success, to help you with your journey as a special educator. In addition, there is a brand new special education collective for special ed teachers that is available for you to have for monthly training, downloads for special ed, different templates, as well as activities for math, reading, science, and social studies. It is available right now. You can check it out on my website, The Exceptional Collective. You can find it over at Cultivating Exceptional Minds. It's really a place where special educators can find the resources, the trainings that they need to quickly implement them into their classrooms. I would love for you to come and join in. Check out the training first if that's something that you want to learn more about with planning out your whole year of what to teach in special education classrooms. I will link it in the show notes, but come be a part of the collective. Now, I can't wait for you to hear our episode today, so let's go ahead and jump on in. Hey everyone, today we have Ashley from Spedtacular Days here to chat with us all things ECSE, which is Early Childhood Special Ed, and her journey becoming an ECSE teacher. So help me welcome Ashley. Hey girl, how are you?
Hey, thanks for having me. Super excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here and excited just to chat with you about kind of reflecting on how this new school year went and things that you learned. And for anyone who's listening and maybe starting this journey, sharing some tips of how to make it even better. So for any of our listeners who may not know you, give us a little bit of your background and what you're doing today.
All right. So I just wrapped up my 11th year in special education. My first 7 years, I did an ID classroom in intellectual disabilities in middle school, grades 6 to 8. And then I had twins and needed something a little bit closer to home. So I transitioned to a resource teacher, which a lot of people know as an inclusion teacher. So I worked in the general ed setting and assisted the classroom teacher for students in there that needed some support. And then this past year, I transitioned again within the same building to an ECSE teacher. I've never really had a lot of experience with little kids, but I love little kids, and it was an opportunity that was brought to me. So I took it, and I just finished my first year in ECSE. So I have so many great things to share with you all today.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to hear just kind of that journey of everything that you learned this year, kind of the good and the bad. So let's just jump into it. What is something as you started the year? So you found out the news, you started the year off and you're learning all the things, right? You're probably just trying to stay afloat. But what is something that you wish you had like learned sooner or implemented quicker, that was like really a game changer?
So the ECSE classroom I work in is all play-based, and that was brand new. I'd never, known a lot about how to play with toys and also teach. It's not sitting down and doing worksheets like my own children were doing in their preschool setting. So it was basically shifting that mindset. I did a lot of reading blogs and talking to other ECSE teachers like, hey, how do you incorporate? What does this look like in your day? And just basically learning that play structure and that play model and what that looks like. I was very blessed to start off with a very small caseload. And then my caseload literally from when I started in August until I ended in June, literally tripled from day one to the end of the school year. So very grateful to have started off small, kind of got my feet wet. And as I got new kids that were found eligible, was able to implement those skills that I learned.
Very cool. Well, let's chat a little more about like the play base and any tips that you have for any special educator that is maybe making the move like you did last summer or starting their journey as a special educator in the early childhood domain. What are some tips you can share with the listeners to help them make it the best year that they can?
So looking at your students, obviously look at their IEPs, their strengths, their weaknesses, and then find toys that work with that. Also plan out thematic units. So initially I had planned out all of these things, and then I realized I needed to shift it much smaller. So dramatic play, if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see we did a different theme every 2 to 3 weeks. And I just started there. And then eventually I moved into our art center, also correlating with that. But initially I just had kids work on the fist grab or just holding a pencil or a paintbrush and things like that. So work slow. Don't feel like you have to jump in and have your block center, your dramatic play center, your art center, your reading center all correlate. It's great if it can, but honestly, start with one thematic unit and then work in just one theme. And then by August or by June, I was able to have blocks, have some things incorporated into it. That was one big thing. But the other things I would say is find toys that are going to be engaging and shift, like rotate them out. So I literally had Mondays, we did something. Tuesdays, we did something. So like we had cause and effect toys. We had like the big race car ramp come out one day a week, because one day a week, then the kids would forget about it for 6 days and then it would come back and it would still be exciting. So don't bring out the same toys every day. But if you do, like we used magnet tiles a lot, put something else in it. Bring dinosaurs out one day, bring out your counting bears, and then have them like make a blue box and then sort them, all the blue bears in a box and then all the yellow bears in a box type of thing. So change the activity if you're going to keep it consistent. But also for kids, like we had, like I said, the car ramps, they loved that. And that was great for turn taking, requesting a color car. And then I would add things into it, like it could run into a box and then stop. And we would say stop on the iPad, or they would show me the sign for stop. And then we would say go. We would count 3, 2, 1 or 1, 2, 3. So there's a lot of ways you can incorporate academic things into play-based. It's that mind shift from a teacher who was literally, pushed, and we're pushed in college basically to say like, you got to teach them academics, you got to do this. But just looking at the kids. Also, just a really quick tip, when seasons change, go to like any pharmacy, like, a drugstore, they always have that aisle that goes 70% off. I bought a ton of toys, like those little light up toys that, for 50 cents, and I would buy like 8 of them. And I just made a box, and my co-teacher and I now have this box, and she would buy things. We had like bubble blowers and those light up toys and poppers that work for so many different things. And those are really engaging to bring out one day a week. And it really makes your center time more fun. And it works on a ton of IEP goals.
Very cool. Okay. So you said keep things simple. It's okay that you don't have everything like Pinterest perfect day one. So start with one center or area, and to make sure and like have the different kinds of activities that you can swap out throughout the day, and to integrate the academics where you can, that is a play base. And that does sound like very much so a mindset shift, but remembering that it is also age appropriate for the learners that we're working with at that age. I too like spent 2 or 3 years in preschool, and it was always very interesting to me that like the attention span, like sometimes I feel like in elementary, like the attention span small, like holy moly, ECSE is like, I mean, I'm talking like 2 minutes or less.
Yes.
Or less.
Now my kids, it was like, it took us all year to be able to do 3 turn taking exchanges, just because their focus couldn't hold, long enough to pass the ball back and forth, or, when we did cause and effect toys, they couldn't wait long enough to have 3 turns. So, and that might sound crazy to some kids, but a lot of kids come into ECSE and they've never socialized. And think about it, like the pandemic happened, and then a lot of these kids were isolated for basically the first 2 years of their life, when a lot of social development happens. And so a lot of the kids that came into me, they were like, mom's like, this is the first time they've engaged with peers their age at all. So that was kind of eye-opening to me. I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. You're 3, you were born in 2020, so that was a lot of shifting too. Like we really had to not lower the expectations, but really not set them as high as initially what I had thought. I was like, oh, okay, we're going to work on this. We're going to work on your attention span for 15 seconds versus 2 minutes. So that was a big shift, and just really thinking about the kids as they're growing in any sort of setting. Like think about the last 3 years of their life and what that could have possibly looked like.
Yeah. Is there any tips that you would share with the ECSE community to build the relationships with parents? How did you make sure and establish good rapport with them?
So a benefit is I stayed within my same building. So a lot of people knew who I was. But in the beginning of the school year, we had a back to school night and an open house, and I just made myself available. I was like, what questions do you have? I'm also a mom, so I could kind of relate on that sense for them. And my coworker and I made a packet, very detailed, with the 7 different things you would need to know as a parent, like what's our curriculum, what to expect, what's a day look like, how are they going to get fed, changing, clothing, all the things that, like, what does that look like? And I just left the communication door open for them. I said, we have an app. We use Remind with our school district. It's like a texting app. I will send pictures every day. We had a communication log that we would use too. We eventually shifted to more of a digital platform versus a paper platform. Once our caseload tripled, it was really challenging to fill out 12 paper-based communication logs when the kids were still there. So the digital one we could do once they left, and spend a little bit more time. We sent home a monthly communication letter that had every single thing we were going to do, our thematic units, what the art we were going to do, what our book of the week was, what songs we were doing. And we linked it all. It was digital. So we linked everything. We said, hey, we're doing these 5 songs. You can practice them at home. Here are the YouTube links if you want to do something with your kids. So my coworker and I tried really hard to be open and upfront, like this is what a day looks like. We had 3 parties throughout the year, so they could come in and see the classroom. And then we also did monthly check-ins, and that was required by our school. So once a month, we would hold a 30-minute meeting with each family. They could bring questions to the table. They could ask things. They could come into the room if they wanted and see certain areas. So when people always look and they go, oh, well, you only teach like not a full day. I'm like, technically you're right. But I also, like, the last 2 hours of the day are literally filled with paperwork. I have at least 12 meetings a month with parents. And then I have, IEP meetings, and then I have my countywide meetings. And then I'm planning, the next unit. So people are always like, oh, I don't understand. I'm like, well, think about it. Elementary school teachers get their planning throughout the day. Mine's just like more of in a chunk, which helps a little bit. But those ways, like I said, communication logs, using some sort of app to communicate, the monthly check-ins and things like that. So hopefully that all helps people at least get some sort of an idea.
Yeah, for sure. Now, are all of your learners, do they all have IEPs, or are some of them typical peers?
Mine are all students with IEPs. There are different types of classrooms in our county that have, reverse inclusion. They do have a portion of students they call peer models, and then they have a portion that have students with IEPs. Mine is a self-contained room. So all students in my classroom range from 2.5 to 5, and they have a variety of disabilities and abilities and strengths and weaknesses. So 2.5 to 5 is a huge range. I didn't realize that initially, what a 2-year, like some of my kids came in and were just starting to walk, and I had kids come in who academically were, on par with their peers. But then socially were, had a weakness and that needed to really strengthen that area.
Gotcha. So how do you manage all the different levels of kids? And do you implement any kind of para support?
Yes. So I have one para, and we basically talked at the beginning of the year, and I said, it's not your job just to change diapers or to do the things, everything was 50-50. I said, obviously your responsibility isn't the paperwork, that kind of piece. But her and I really worked together. I'm like, hey, do you want to do block center today and really immerse in the blocks and work on this student's IEP, or try to work here? I'll work on art center today. My para was amazing. She was very crafty. So she did all of all the art things for us. Thankfully, art is just, I'm not good at it. I can do the progressive art, the best of them, but she could draw these gorgeous things and have the kids color them. So we both worked with our strengths, and we're like, okay, you're really good at this and I'm really good at this. Let's conquer.
That's awesome. So how did you break your day? I know it is play-based, but do you have circle time and outside time, or is it all just centers that they're rotating through? And do you ever have kids that wander away? How do you redirect them?
Yes, great question. So we had a set schedule. There was a 25-minute period when they could come in and unpack. So we called that timetable toys. So it was a lot of puzzles, open-ended toys that could keep their attention. And I would rotate those. So Mondays, we did a lot of blocks. Tuesdays, we did a lot of cars. Wednesday, we did a lot of figurines and things like that. Then we did gross motor. So we would do dancing. I would get out the big foam blocks and let them get wiggles out. Then we transitioned and did centers, snack. Thankfully our PE department was amazing, and they gave us 2 days a week to have PE, or we would go outside. Those days when it was really cold and rainy, we got creative and did bubbles, or we had a little section in the hallway where we would put all of our gross motor things, and did that, or we would try to find something more exciting. A lot of times the other ECSE teacher and I would either swap rooms, because different toys, different setting. And then we would do one more center time, books, and then lunch. Lunch was the last thing. And then after lunch, we did dancing while we had a lot of Jack Hartman, Cuckoo Kangaroo. And then we would change diapers, go to the bathroom, pack up, and get ready to go. So some days felt like it went by super fast, and other days were slow. We did a lot of stuff in the springtime outside. We would bring outside chalk. We would bring out all kinds of stuff, and we could play outside. We would do it. We would bring centers outside, sensory and things like that, and do it outside if we could. And the parents were grateful for that. They loved the fact that their kids could go play outside. So that was really nice.
That's awesome. So for that difficult kid that may not can stay focused in a center when you have that center time, What do you do to help redirect them or help them stay in that area? Are you providing like physical prompts? Are you using verbal cues? What are you doing to help
So
elongate their?
that's a good question. Initially, when they pick a center, there's usually 3 centers open. So I would make them choose. I had a magnetic board and they would touch the picture that correlated with that. And I would try to make them stay in there for at least 2 minutes, depending on the child, up to 5 minutes if they could hold attention that long. And if I noticed they were trying to swap, I would either make them ask, like they would either need to say finished, and then I would have the board and they could choose another center. Or I would have them use their words, or they could take a break for a minute or two, like if they needed, and then I would say, okay, break is finished. Let's go back to the center one of the 3 centers that was open. And typically between the 3 centers, the kids were pretty good about staying in there. The first month, it was a learning process, but then they realized, I was like, well, if you're not playing in blocks, you can go to art or kitchen. Where do you want to go? And I had the pictures. But they did a good job. And a lot of times it was 3 centers open and myself and my para. So we would, kind of work that. And if we saw that a center was getting kind of small, we would move to a different center and try to engage the kids that we could see their attention span wasn't really like having it that day.
Gotcha. Awesome. Okay. So for any listeners who may be starting off brand new, what advice would you give to them as because at the time this will air, it'll be like back to school season. So to start off the year on the right foot in the world of ECSE.
So I would say, look at your classroom, see what you have. I'll be truly honest. I did not have a lot in my classroom when I started. So I started looking on there's buy nothing groups on Facebook, anything for free. I did an Amazon donor wish list. And then I also did a donors choose. All of those things combined, I was able to find toys that I could work, toys and play-based items that I could work in multiple settings in multiple ways. So that's one thing I would look at. Look at what you have and then maybe what you need. Make those lists. Also, have a billion visuals ready. Like you never know what kind of visual you're going to need. But if I had like a quiet visual or a more or finished, I would make like 8 of them because you never know. They're going to get ripped. They're going to get thrown away. They're going to get ruined. Have another one ready to go. Label everything. Honestly, one, it's good for the kids. It's good for the adults that come in your room. I would have like speech come in and she's like, I always know where everything is in your room because it's literally labeled everywhere. So that was a big thing. And then make sure your room looks a way where everyone knows what it is. Like you knew my block center was a certain way because I had it like sectioned off. You knew where kitchen was because it was sectioned off. So whether that means you put blue tape, a blue box on the floor, whether it means you have certain carpets, whether that means you have an area marked off with like, dividers. But that was a big thing. And that's helped keep the kids where they need to stay. And that also helps section your room so people know like, oh, this is blocks. This is where you need to be for block center. And I wouldn't let the kids take things from blocks to kitchen or kitchen to blocks. Like those stayed in certain centers.
Awesome. Well, what are you doing this summer at the time of the recording to help reset yourself to make sure and fill your cup back up before the beginning of the school year?
So I'm excited. We're going on a few trips, which I'm super excited, but they're all with kids. So, I mean, if anyone has kids, it's not really a vacation. It's more like a fun trip in a different setting than what your normal life is. But I'm excited for that. Also, I'm sure Dawn has probably told you all, we're working on special ed socials together. I'm really excited about that. That's like just puts that creative spin on my brain. So Dawn and I get to work together a lot this summer. And then honestly, I'm going to read. I love to read books and I'm taking grad classes during the school year. So I'm actually going to read for pleasure instead of reading because my professor told me to. So those things I'm really excited about. And I'm also going to like yard sale shop a lot to buy things for my classroom, which I know sounds silly. Yeah, all those thematic units, I'm going to look for like dramatic play, like costumes, kit stuff for the kitchen, and all the things for my classroom to fill it back up with new things.
Love it. Awesome. Well, I've really enjoyed just learning from you and hearing all the things that you've learned this year and how you've implemented it. And just kind of run with this whole new setting. It sounds like, while it was probably a learning year, you've done it with such exception. So I'm very proud of you. And so for any of our listeners, let us know where they can learn more about the Dramatic Play Centers and where they can find you on the internet.
So I am from Spedtacular Days. I'm that on Instagram. My blog is spedtaculardays.com. I have a few blog posts out there about turn taking and like where you can find things for like a reasonable price, or how you can find things for dramatic play for free. How I did my Donors Choose project, and then some I think I said turn taking, but I have a lot of different play-based blogs that I've just written out there. I do also have a lot of blogs on what I did when I was in middle school. So check those out as well. My Teachers Pay Teacher store, Spedtacular Days, everything is basically under Spedtacular Days. So just Google that and see what comes up.
Awesome. We'll also link it all in the show notes as well. But I appreciate you taking time to chat with us again and being so knowledgeable of what you do. So continue all the hard work and go get that reading done, because I know it makes your heart happy too. So thank you so much for chatting with us today.
Thank you, Don. I'm so excited to be here.